draft picks to acquire Wentz in 2016 and just gave him a $128 million contract 20 months ago. So, Greg, who won the Wentz trade, the Eagles or the Colts?
Well, it was the Colts. When you look at what Carson Wentz can potentially provide, if he gets back to what we saw, then the Colts won this trade. They only had to give up a 3rd-round pick this year, which would equate to the 85th overall pick, and then a conditional 2nd round, which can turn into a 1st round, which for the Colts, or for the Eagles, excuse me, it'll be a later pick if the Colts make that playoff push or if Carson Wentz plays over 75% of the game. So when I look at what the Colts got, and Carson Wentz won more than anyone in this trade, he gets to go to a guy in Frank Wright who he trusts. And trust, we all know, it's everything in sport. When you're playing a position that is relayed or dependent upon others putting you in position and making sure that you can develop a rapport and a chemistry with someone who's not going to be on the field, I need to know that you're going to listen to me. You're going to allow me to have input. You're going to be vested in my success and not being so focused on who's going to come behind me and potentially take my position. And so I think that plays a lot in why Carson Wentz won. And when you look at the Colts, they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback, and they believe Carson Wentz is that guy. And I'll say this, Carson Wentz, when you look at Phillip Rivers and his numbers, statistically, he threw 68% completion percentage last year, threw for over 4,000 yards. Carson Wentz has only thrown 68% completion percentage one time in his career and thrown for over 4,000 yards one time in his career. But what he gives the Colts, in my opinion, is a quarterback that can make every play anytime you need him to make it, except throwing the interception. That has to come down. Obviously, I truly believe that he can do it. It's just as a player, solely as a player, when you see somebody struggling the way Carson Wentz did last year, you got to believe that there is more in him of good than it is bad. I know it was really bad last year, but for the Colts, they believe that he can get back to form of 2018, 2019, where he was pretty good under center, and we all thought he could be special for years to come.
Oh, this is a dream for the Colts. Of course the Colts won the trade. You lose Phillip Rivers, who had a nice season last year, but it was obviously time to go, and you immediately replace him with Carson Wentz. Frank Wright, Carson Wentz, back together again. Carson Wentz is in a comfortable situation. This is what he wanted. This is what the Colts wanted, and they didn't have to give up a lot to get him. And I mean, for a franchise quarterback, that's nothing. This is a great situation for Carson Wentz and the Colts. But for me, the pressure is on now, Carson. This is what you wanted. He didn't want to be coached hard. There was a lot of talk about leadership. He wasn't comfortable with Jalen Hurts. The Nick Foles thing made him uncomfortable. Well, now you're the guy. Now you're not going to get sacked 50 times a season because the offensive line with the Colts is great. You have a running game, you have weapons to throw to, and a solid defense. The Colts got their guy. I can't wait to see what happens here, but they definitely won the trade. I just believe now all of the pressure is on Carson Wentz. You can't make any more excuses. Nobody's coming up behind you. You're going to have all the input you need, and you're with your guy, Frank Wright. But the Colts definitely won this trade.
Look, Philadelphia is still taking a $34 million dead cap hit, and they don't know who their quarterback is. They definitely lost this trade. There's no question about it. Now, Joy, you're right. The pressure's on Carson Wentz. If he's ever going to be anything in this league, if he's ever going to get back to what he was in 2017 when he was on track to win an MVP award, it will happen in Indy. This is a perfect situation for him. It's a completely fresh start, which is absolutely what he needed. He's got everything. You mentioned Frank Reich, who was his offensive coordinator in Philadelphia when he had the great year in 2017, Greg. So that's perfect. The offensive line you talked about, Joy. Phillip Rivers was sacked 19 times last year. 19, that's it. Carson Wentz was sacked the league high 50 times in Philadelphia in only 12 games. So a quarterback can't ask for anything more than a clean pocket, and he will have that in Indy. As far as receivers, we'll see if they bring back T.Y. Hilton, who's a very good receiver, but they also remember have Paris Campbell, who was injured, really been injured, most of his 2-year career. If he's healthy, and they're thinking he will be for next year, he can be dangerous. Jonathan Taylor, the rookie running back, was 3rd in the league in rushing last year. So you got a run game. You got a top 10 defense. I mean, there's nothing that you don't have there in Indianapolis. And the Colts are looking at it like, we very likely may have our next quarterback, our franchise quarterback, for the next 10 years. So they did awesome in this trade. There's no question about it, Greg.
Yeah, and Joy, I hear you on the pressure being on Carson Wentz, but you got to think from his perspective, when you're in a favorable situation, when you're in the situation that you have desired, yeah, there may be pressure from the outside, but from inside, he's looking at it like, I got everything I need. There is no pressure. I have others that are going to step up and make plays and make me better. We talk about the sacks. He's going to be sacked more than 19 times next year. And the reason why is because he holds on to the ball a little bit longer than Phillip Rivers, a guy who doesn't extend plays with his legs. He gets rid of the ball, plays with more rhythm. That is not Carson Wentz. He's going to afford them opportunities to extend plays and get the ball down the field, something that we didn't see him do on a consistent basis the last few years. And I'll say this. When you have a quarterback that has struggled, once you start to get him up front and get him protected and the pocket clears and he's starting to go through those progressions and he's not under duress without it being on his own accord, meaning him getting outside of the pocket, he can exhale. He can go in that huddle, call that play call, and not concern himself mentally with, am I going to be running for my life? And I think a lot of that played into his bad performances last year. He was doing a lot of running for his life. I'm not trying to make excuses for Carson Wentz, but that was fact. We saw film, we saw the tape. But when you look at where he's at now, you both mentioned it, you laid it out. It is set up for his success. And from the inside of Carson Wentz's lens, he doesn't look at it as pressure. He looks at it as all I have to do is my job.
No, he's in a great situation. We've seen Carson Wentz throw to practice squad guys and make it happen. So I have no doubt that he's going to take a fundamental step up just with the weapons around him. But when I talk about pressure, he is not somebody who can handle adversity off the field. Now, that's not really something I think he's going to face in Indianapolis, but we saw what happened when he got injured and Nick Foles won. He started to fall apart. Then they bring in Jalen Hurts, and that's a whole other emotional situation. This is a competitive league. It's the most competitive business in the world, professional sports, maybe. You're going to have people trying to take your job. That's how this works. It's what have you done for me lately? You got to go win. And Philadelphia is a place that demands winning. So it's going to be a comfortable situation for Wentz. So I understand what you're saying. There's no pressure in that situation. But to me, I'm watching because he's been compared to Dak Prescott. He's had this MVP season. I want to see what you do now. You're in your nice little comfy situation. You got your Snuggie on. You know what I'm saying? You got everybody around you. Keep everything nice and comfortable. You're going to have time. So now it's on you, Carson. That's how I feel about this situation. I'm excited to see it. I think the Colts won the trade. He's going to have everything he needs. So go paint your masterpiece.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Philly. Obviously, they took the L on this one, but let's look at it this way. Maybe they've cleaned up their locker room situation too. You talked about some of Wentz's issues, Joy, and he had them. You know, there was talk for years about some of the players not believing in him, some guys being put off by his attitude or his personality. Obviously, his relationship with Doug Peterson fell apart toward the end. And Jalen Hurts is already working out with the quarterbacks before they traded Carson Wentz. He's working out with the other receivers, I should say. And so that shows that Hurts had already taken over that locker room from Carson Wentz. So you do at least have a positive vibe in Philadelphia. The question is, how good is Jalen Hurts? He reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott, at least earlier in his career, and maybe even still now, was not a guy that could make a mountain out of a molehill. He couldn't take, guys who were only adequate and be great himself. So Jalen Hurts, I don't see that in him either. He's a leader. He's a guy who's got the trust and the respect of his locker room mates. He's a guy that can make plays with his legs and at times with his arm, but he hasn't yet shown you that he's a franchise quarterback. So that's going to be the big question. And, there's reports that Philadelphia may even draft a quarterback with the 6th pick. I'm not mad at them for that. There's nothing wrong with some competition. I think Jalen Hurts is strong enough mentally to handle the competition. And if he's not your guy, maybe you get your guy at quarterback in the draft. If he is your guy, he beats out whoever you draft at quarterback. So I think that's the positive you take away if you're Philadelphia. But overall, it is an L. I think if they had had their druthers, they would have kept Carson Wentz and had that competition in the training camp between Wentz and Hurts and let the best man win. But there was just too much bad blood there with Wentz. It was time for him to go.